Welcome back to a new episode of the Imperfectionist podcast. My name is David Rendall. It has been a long time since we've recorded an episode, but that's part of Imperfection, and we've got some exciting new things coming. We're going to do a new limited, possibly extended series on my new book called Speak Different, which is a book about how to give better presentations. But this is about something that's been pissing me off and that I've been hearing on social media and on podcasts, and I think it's ridiculous, and I want to respond. We've talked about some of these kinds of things in the past where people are like, bloom where you're planted, and it's like, well, no, that's not even how plants work. It's a terrible analogy. And so there's all this bad advice out there, but very successful people and influential people share it, and I'm worried that people are hearing it and thinking that it's actually true and it actually makes sense. And so that's what we're going to talk about today. Is I've been hearing a bunch of people say, I've never learned anything from success. I've only learned from failure. And we're going to get into it, but that's absolute nonsense. It's not true in any real way. And it's really misleading and potentially harmful. I looked it up to see who's actually saying this, and it's all over the place. One from George Clooney, just in case you think, sometimes people come up with an argument, it's not real. You're arguing against something that no one's really saying. But that's not the case here. George Clooney, very, very, very successful actor, business person, very attractive, very wealthy, meets every definition that you might have of success, seems to have a good marriage. Failure teaches you everything. You learn nothing from success. We'll get into why that's nonsense in a little while. Niki Lauda, from success you learn absolutely nothing. From failure and setbacks, conclusions can be drawn. So, Kenneth Boulding, nothing fails like success because we don't learn from it. So there's two arguments here. We don't learn anything from success. We learn everything from failure. Crazy. Now, can you learn some things from failure? Absolutely. But you can also learn some things from success. Do you only learn from failure? Absolutely not. So, Fred Brooks, you can learn more from failure than success. Bram Stoker, the Dracula guy. We learn from failure, not from success. So that's what we're talking about today. That's absolute nonsense. It's not helpful, and it's pissing me off. So let's kind of break this down one by one. Why is this not true? Number one, these are all successful people saying this, right? So these are people who even only have the platform to talk about this because of their successes. If all they'd ever done was fail, and if all their wonderful learnings were from failures, then they would just be a failure. And you would never have the chance to hear from them because they wouldn't have the platform. No one would be listening to them. Nobody would be paying attention to them. No one would be tuning into their podcast. And nobody would be listening to them when they were on somebody else's podcast because nobody would be asking them to be on a podcast because they're a failure. So clearly, these people have had successes. And those successes have helped them in a lot of ways, and they've learned a lot of things from those successes. We'll get into what those things are to begin with. But this is the first problem with this, right? You have successful people saying, I haven't learned anything from success. You've learned how to be successful. George Clooney has learned, I'm good at acting. People like watching me. I'm attractive. People will buy the stuff that I sell. He's learned all sorts of things from success. He learned how to be a good actor by being a somewhat good actor and then getting better at acting and then having success at it and learning what that success looked like. In fact, we're going to get into the psychology of it later. This is the number one way that people learn. We literally learn from success, rewards and punishments. When you do something and it works out, you learn, do more of that. When you eat a cookie and it tastes good, your body learns cookies taste good and it wants to repeat that. And the same thing happens in any other environment. If you read something and it's interesting to you and it feels good, you learn, hey, reading about this topic makes me feel good. Learning about this topic makes me feel good. If you learn that you're a good listener and that people like talking to you and you like listening to them and interacting with them and you have success in interpersonal relationships, that success and the learning that comes from it helps you build a life around what you're good at and what you like and what has made you successful. And you can use that in business, and you can use that in personal relationships. You can use that in your career. We literally learn from success. We learn from having things go well and experiencing the reward from it. And our brain stores that and says, let's do that again. Let's try more of that. I'm getting ahead of myself. So number one, these are all successful people saying that, right? These are not failures saying this. And these are not people who've had primarily failures in their life. They've had predominantly successful lives and successful experiences. And maybe they've had a couple of failures along the way, or they failed in some kind of small way along the way, or maybe it took them a while to get to that success. But these are successful people saying that. That's the first problem with this. The second one is that these successes that these people have insulate them from the failures that they're talking about. They're like, don't be afraid to fail, but don't be afraid to try a new business. Don't be afraid to try something new. Don't be afraid to go after something. Well, sure. When you're incredibly successful and also incredibly attractive and incredibly wealthy, your successes insulate you from those failures. Now, am I saying that that's not fair? No. What I'm saying is it's the successes that have given them the platform to have the failures. If I have a business that's made me $1 billion, it's easier for me to start other businesses that might fail. If I've only got $10 to invest in my new business, I kind of need it to succeed. And if it doesn't, now I have $0 and I'm in big trouble. I'm back living with my parents, but maybe I can't even live with my parents, and maybe I've got no place to stay, and now I'm on the street. That's failure, right? That's failure. So success, if we're going to practice this go for failure kind of mindset, and failure's wonderful and try to have more failures, fine. But you have to have a platform of success to do that, or else you're in real trouble. There's real trouble that people can be in. I don't have a car to drive. I don't have a place to live. I don't have a job. I don't have any loving and caring relationships. I don't have my mental health. Like, that's failure, right? So failure teaches us everything. No, it doesn't, right? No, it doesn't. And even if it does, we need a certain number of successes as a platform, as a foundation, in order for us to build on that. I can mess up at a few smaller things when I've got at least one or two of the big things taken care of, right? So number two is that successes insulate us from failures. If we're not having some kind of successes, if we don't have some kind of platform, then pursuing this excitement about wonderful, wonderful failure and learning from failure isn't really an option for us, because the effects can be devastating. I mean, and that's the other thing too. Like, some failures are final. They're like, I either succeeded or I learned. You know, I didn't fail. I succeeded or I learned. I either won or I learned. I didn't lose. Well, no, if you don't know how to rock climb well enough, or you try something that's too hard for you and you fall off and you die, you don't learn, you die. You don't get another chance. So this excitement about failure also misses the fact that some failures are final, or even if they're not final, they're incredibly devastating. I mean, a business bankruptcy, a personal bankruptcy, divorce, losing a love, some of these things that can happen to us, losing relationships with people that we really care about, can be devastating to a person. You know, getting addicted to drugs or alcohol, having a failure in that area, making a bad choice and having it start to spiral. These are not necessarily opportunities to learn. These are opportunities to experience some really significant difficulty that sometimes, and this is the key, we don't come back from, we don't learn from, we don't come around and get some kind of benefit from it. It just ends, and it ends terribly. So we have to have some kind of success foundation. And I guess that's, number three. I guess I just added one. Some failures are final. You don't get a chance to come back from some things. And so to tell people, go out there and fail, because failure is wonderful, and don't worry about success at all, because nothing can be learned from success. I mean, what a wild thing to say. the next one, let's call this number 4. The next thing that's wrong with this is that there's a million ways to do things wrong, right? And there's not nearly as many ways to do things right. If I am married and I get divorced because I didn't communicate any negative things to my wife, I wasn't willing to be critical, I wasn't willing to complain, I wasn't willing to talk about my unmet needs. I was afraid of conflict, and so I held it all in. And then my marriage dies. Okay, can I learn something from that? Yes, I can learn that that's probably not a good way to do it. But does it teach me what to do? No, it doesn't. It only teaches me what not to do, right? This is something that we'll talk about a little later, the psychology of it, but let's keep going with that example. So then I get married again. And in this marriage, I always talk about what I want and what I need and what I'm not getting. I'm critical. I pursue conflict, feeling that conflict, if it can be resolved and if it can be put out into the open, is what is going to heal my marriage. Because if keeping quiet didn't work and avoiding conflict didn't work, then pursuing conflict, the opposite, must be the successful way. But then I get divorced again because my new wife doesn't like me because I'm complaining all the time and I'm arguing all the time. And so now I've learned that that doesn't work either. And so now maybe I go into marriage number 3 and I try to find some kind of perfect balance between those two. But you see how my failure hasn't really taught me anything, or it's not certainly teaching me very quickly, and I'm certainly not on the path to having a successful marriage. And also the third person I might marry might be a person who wishes that I would stuff it in and hold it down and not talk about it and not put it out in the open, and they're perfectly comfortable with that. Or maybe the third person I marry is very comfortable with conflict, and they'd be happy to have me ranting and raving because they do the same thing and they see that as some kind of sign of passion. And so now I'm failing for a third time, and how many chances do I get, and how old am I before all of this marriage failure finally pays off for me, right? I'm not actually learning from the failure. I'm not learning anything significant. I'm just learning what doesn't work. I'm not learning what does work, because what does work isn't always the opposite of what doesn't work. So failure isn't a great teacher because of the time that it takes, but also because all it does is check one thing off the list that you shouldn't do or doesn't work. And even that isn't necessarily right. Again, some relationships your partner will be very comfortable with, and in fact will almost require you or demand that you communicate conflict and concerns and what you want and need. And so if you learned from some past relationship failure that you shouldn't do that, well, that learning doesn't transfer because now you're dealing with a different person. The same thing can happen with a boss at work. I got in trouble at my last job because I took too much initiative, and I was constantly sharing ideas, and I overstepped my bounds, and my boss didn't like it. So they fired me. So I'm going to go to my next job, and I'm going to keep quiet and keep my head down and just do what I'm told. But your new boss wants you to share ideas. They want you to take initiative. They want you to get out there, and now you're in trouble again because you're not doing enough, and because you're keeping your head down, and because you're not sharing your ideas, and you don't seem to have any initiative. And see how you're not learning from failure? And now maybe you learn, okay, I learned from that failure that people are different. And this is not moving you reliably on the path, right, to what you want. The same thing happens with a lot of people with jobs. They go to try a job, they learn they don't like it. They try another job, they learn they don't like it. They try another job, they learn they don't like it. They're learning what they don't like, but because it's all failures and no successes, they're not learning what they do like, and that's all you really need. All you really need is one kind of job that you like, and you can build a whole life, you can build a whole career out of that. What you need is a success. This is why it's pissing me off. Success teaches you. You try a bunch of classes in college and you find one that's really interesting you. That's what happened to me with psychology. And you learn, I really like psychology. And then you have success and you enjoy it and it feels good and you do well. You're learning and you think, well, there's some kind of work related to this would be good for me. And then you get into work related to psychology and you're helping make the world a better place and you enjoy your work and it feels meaningful to you. And that success helps. And what's great about success is it can rule out a million things and narrow it down to just a few things. And then you don't need to go have all those failures. You don't need to go, well, I wonder, what other things. You don't need that, because now you're succeeding, you're happy, you're successful, things are working, right? And again, these people who tell you that have an area, they have a thing. George Clooney's acting, Bram Stoker's writing. These other people are doing jobs and doing work that makes them successful and makes them feel good and makes them happy. And then they're selling failure to you, some kind of nonsense, and acting as though success is somehow unnecessary. And again, what's the goal of all this? They're actually giving you success advice, and the success advice is fail. Well, if failure is so awesome, then why do I even want to get to success? Because success is going to teach me nothing. Right? Oh man, you can tell I'm mad here. I'm up here in my room, probably waking up some family members here shouting about this. So these are successful people. Number one, successes insulate them from failures, and they insulate the rest of us from failures as well. That's why successes are so important, and we can learn a lot from those successes. I forget what number 3 was because I didn't write it down. I just came up with it along the way. But number 4 is there's 1,000 ways to do things wrong, and there's only a few ways to do things right. And so think about the reverse, right? Person has a good marriage, and they learn how to be a good partner by finding out what the other person wants and needs, and finding out what they can provide and how they can support and how to be a good parent. And those successes teach them what to do and what does work. And then they can find ways to repeat that and continue to build those relationships. That's what you have to have at some point. You have to have some kind of successes. You have to have some wins in order to learn what works, what feels good, what helps other people feel good, what makes me happy, what makes other people happy, what builds relationships, what builds my career. Where can I be of use? Where can I be of value? Where will people pay for what I have? That's what we learn from success. This next one, number 5, is a little bit wonky, but I mean, my master's is in counseling psychology. My bachelor's is in counseling psychology. And there's basically 2 things that can happen when we do something. You can do something and have the result be negative, some kind of failure. You can do something and have the result be positive, some kind of success. But let's think about when we're trying to motivate somebody. When we studied motivation in college and in graduate school, what they showed us was that you can't learn what to do from punishment, from failure, from having things go wrong, right? So I've always given this example in my speeches. If you got 2 kids and you tell the one hits the other kid, you go, hey, don't hit your sister, right? Then they poke their sister, and you say, hey, don't poke your sister. And then they push the shoulder of their sister, and you say, okay, now you try to go broader with it. Don't touch your sister. So then they wave their hand in front of their sister's face. And then you say, don't put your body near your sister. And then they blow on them from 2.5 feet away. Do you see what I'm doing here? Every time you punish something, every time you restrict something, every time you say, that's wrong, don't do that anymore, that's a fail, I want you to learn from your failures, the person just comes up with another way to do it wrong. Right? And the way to do things wrong is infinite. Now, I'm not touching them. I'm throwing something at them from the other side of the room. I'm nowhere near them. I'm not even in the same room. I'm standing in the doorway, throwing projectiles at them, right? What you really want is for the person to treat the other person kindly and with some kind of respect. And the only way to get there is to catch it when it's happening and praise it. Teach them that's a success. They're playing nicely with their sister, and you come up on them doing that and you say, hey, that's fantastic. That's what I'm talking about. Your sister needed something and you shared it with her. You guys are playing so nicely and you're doing things that are thoughtful and kind. You catch them doing things right. Ken Blanchard's a famous author and speaker in the area of management, one of the originals, and he writes these interesting stories. I think one of them was Who Moved My Cheese, but I might be wrong about that. Oh, the 1 minute manager was his big one. I don't know if he was the who moved my cheese one, but that's one of his ideas. Catch people doing things right. And again, we love constructive criticism because we think we're helping people when we point out their failures. And it turns out it's not really that helpful at all. Pointing out people's failures only teaches them what not to do. It's also demoralizing and unmotivating in a lot of different ways. But the big point that I'm trying to make here is we don't learn what to do. You can't get the behavior you want from punishment, and you can't get it from yourself through failure, because failure is a form of punishment and it only teaches us what not to do. It doesn't teach us the right behaviors. It doesn't teach us good behaviors. It only teaches us how to avoid the wrong behaviors. And if you want your kids, if you want your employees, if you want yourself to do good, right, effective, successful things, that happens when those things are rewarded, when there's some kind of positive result, not when there's a negative result. Eating a food that I think is disgusting, it doesn't teach me what kinds of foods I like to eat. It just teaches me what kinds of foods I don't like to eat. And I can try to avoid that food, but it doesn't teach me to like hamburgers. It doesn't teach me to like broccoli. It doesn't teach me to eat healthy. It just teaches me don't have that. Okay. And so that's really big. And that's a mistake we make all the time is, well, I need to point out when people are doing things wrong, and punishment is important. And certainly there are things that we want to teach people not to do. But even that, guess what? The best way to have people not do the wrong thing is to have them busy doing the right things. When I'm busy spending time with my children, when I'm busy building a relationship with my wife, when I'm busy exercising, when I'm busy building my business, I'm not developing a gambling addiction. I'm not developing a porn addiction. I'm not developing an alcohol addiction because I'm too busy doing good things, successful things, positive things to do the negative things. The best way to stop overeating isn't to sit in your kitchen staring at cake and try to keep yourself from doing it. It's to be busy doing some other kind of thing to the point that you're not even thinking about that. The way to stop watching too much TV isn't to sit in your living room staring at a blank screen and telling yourself don't turn it on. It's to develop a hobby like knitting or gardening or golf or something that gets you out doing something other than that. It's the positive thing. It's the successful thing. It's the thing you enjoy. The way to eat right isn't to focus on all the things you don't want to eat, all the failure foods. It's to focus on what are foods that I do enjoy that would be helpful for me, would be healthy for me. It's not to focus on what you don't want and what you don't want to do. And so we don't learn as much as we think we do from failure and punishment and from having things go poorly. We actually learn literally everything important. Every good behavior you have was learned from seeing that pay off in some kind of way. That's success. And if you don't have successes with good behaviors, if the good things you do or the positive things you do or the healthy things you do never lead to any kind of payoff, everything leads to failure, then you won't develop those behaviors and you won't have any positive behaviors, and your life will end in a spiral of failure, right? So, and then that's the last one, right? And I've said it all throughout all of these things, but success actually teaches us a lot. I discovered in college that I liked reading when it was an interesting subject. I didn't like school in high school, and I didn't like what I was forced to study. But once I discovered psychology, this magical thing became unlocked. I found it fascinating. I found it interesting. And I realized I could read about leadership, read about psychology, read about personal success. And I absolutely loved it. And now I wasn't forcing myself to do it. And I wasn't trying to do it. I wasn't doing it because I was supposed to. And I wasn't disciplined. And I wasn't pushing myself to do things that were hard. And that's a corollary we'll talk about some other day. You can be really successful and not do hard things. You can be really successful and do things you like. You can be really successful and do things you enjoy. You can be really successful and not have to make yourself do it and push yourself to do it and force yourself to do it. But that's not what we're talking about today. So success actually teaches us a lot. It teaches us what works. It teaches us what feels good to us. It teaches us what we have to offer to this world. And once I discovered that I liked learning and I liked ideas, then I discovered I liked sharing those ideas, and I had success at it. I mean, my whole life is built on those successes. I'm a guest on podcasts because I'm successful at speaking. I get to coach people on speaking because I'm successful at speaking. I get hired to do other speeches because I'm successful at speaking. I got to do an Ironman triathlon because I was successful doing a half Ironman triathlon. And I did a half Ironman triathlon because I was successful doing an Olympic distance triathlon. I did Olympic distance triathlon because I was successful doing a sprint distance triathlon. I did a sprint distance triathlon because I was successful running a marathon. And I thought, I wonder if I could add some elements to it. And before I did a marathon, I did a half marathon. Anybody who's successful, who's a successful professional athlete, last night we were celebrating the overtime win for the Carolina Hurricanes here in the Raleigh, North Carolina area, won in overtime in the second game of the Stanley Cup. People who are successful hockey players now were successful hockey players. When they were little, it worked out for them. They did well. They were bigger, faster, stronger, more athletic, more coordinated, more motivated, more consistent, more whatever. And then that success led to opportunities for more success, which led to opportunities for more success, which led to opportunities for more success. One of the guys who's on the opposing team, the Vegas Golden Knights, Jack Eichel, I think that's his name, was on the gold medal winning team in the Olympics for hockey for the United States. He was successful at that. You know what it taught him? You're good at hockey. Keep going, right? Imagine the person's like, oh, I'm having too much success. Time to go fail at something. No, it's not. It's time to maximize the success in the area where I'm having success. And then they do this, what got you here won't get you there. And that's, again, another one to talk about. No, it's exactly what's going to get you there. You know, Mark Messier is one of the announcers for the Stanley Cup hockey last night. Guess what? He was a successful hockey player. He was a popular hockey player. He was a famous hockey player. You know what he said? What if I parlay that success? What if I transfer that success into a continuing career after playing hockey, into commenting on hockey? He was a smart hockey player. He was an insightful hockey player, and he built on that success. Athletes do that all over the place, and they become an agent. They get involved in that sport in some other way, and others don't. They move on to restaurants, or they move on to other businesses. But even that goes back to one of the first things I said. The success gives them a platform for failures. If you've made millions and millions of dollars as a professional athlete or as some kind of business person, and then you decide to open a restaurant and it doesn't work out, again, it wasn't your last $10 and you'll be okay. But if it is my last $10, if it's my only chance to feed my family, if my wife told me if I can't make this work, then we don't work because she needs to be with someone who can take care of her and the kids, then this isn't time to be excited about failure. This is time where I need success, right? So when you hear this stuff, I just want you to, what bothers me is, I tell people I'm a professional speaker and they go, oh, a motivational speaker. And I go, yeah. And then these other people do it and they just say the stupidest things. And I know they're trying to help, or they're trying to be counterintuitive, or they're trying to be interesting, or they're trying to say something other than what you heard of. But it's like, success is really good. It's like people say money can't buy you happiness. They've done a bunch of studies and it absolutely does. And here's what we know for sure. A lack of money creates a tremendous amount of stress and unhappiness and pain and difficulty. And if you have to walk for miles every day to go get water, if disease has completely taken over the community in which you live, if there are no job opportunities, if there are no educational opportunities, if there's no roads, if there's no waste disposal, if there's no trash pickup, if there's no plumbing, you're going to have a bad life. You're going to have a painful life. You're going to have a difficult life. You're going to have an unhappy life, right? And a little bit of money would add a lot of happiness, and a little bit of shelter, and a little bit of good, safe food, and a little bit of running water, and a little bit of plumbing, and a little bit. It's absolute nonsense. Money can't buy you happiness, sure. But that doesn't really matter to somebody who doesn't have any money, who doesn't have enough money. Who's this advice for, right? Who's this advice for? And also, guess what? Money does insulate you from a lot of unhappiness, a lot of things that make people unhappy, a lot of things that wear people down and break people down can be handled with money. All right? Now, I'm not here, success isn't money. That's not what I'm saying. But there's these motivational people, or they're trying to be motivational, they're trying to be influential, and then they just tell you things that if you built your life on it, it wouldn't work, right? It wouldn't work, and then they have no responsibility for that. And it's also just fundamentally not true, but it sounds interesting. It sounds like maybe it is true, which is why I decided to do this episode. So that's the first half of the episode. You can learn nothing from success, only failure. When you hear that, absolute nonsense, and hopefully those reasons why were helpful. But I also have an exciting new example of the freak factor and pink goldfish. This idea that imperfections, right? This is the Imperfectionist podcast. The imperfections can actually be the things that make us successful. And one of the reasons I haven't been podcasting as much is because I've been absolutely addicted to golf. And I took 25 years off of golf in order to raise my daughters. And even when I did golf when I was younger, I didn't have enough money or enough time to do it very much. And so I wasn't very good, and I didn't have very much experience with it, even though I tried to play as much as I could. And I also lived in Wisconsin, where you can't play for 7-8 months out of the year sometimes, and it wasn't very conducive to that. So started playing in March of 2025. Right now it's June of 2026. And I played about 130 times last year, and I've played, almost 100 times in the last 3 months. And I've gotten interested in YouTube golf, and the most successful YouTube golf channel is Bob Does Sports. It's a guy named Robbie Berger, Bobby Fairways. And he's an amazing example of a pink goldfish, right? His business is built on imperfection, and he's a person whose weaknesses are his strengths. So the most obvious is his show. It's called Bob Does Sports, but the only sport they do now is golf. And he's terrible. He's got one of the parts of the series is breaking 80, which is 7 over par in most situations. 72 is par. 80 would be 8 over par, so he has to only make 7 bogeys. And he's never done that. He plays golf for a living on this show. He gets to play all the time and travel to the coolest courses in the world. And he can't do something that a quote-unquote good golfer would be able to do. And that's precisely what people like about it. They like him because he's bad at golf. They see themselves in him. Most golfers are bad. The majority of golfers will never break 80. I think the majority of golfers will never even break 90. And so Bobby Fairways, that's a joke, right? He's not Bobby Fairways. He doesn't hit the fairways. He hits it into the woods. He hits it into the water. He has a series that he does with another YouTube golfer, Grant Horvat, where he's so much worse than Grant that Grant, can Bobby win if Bobby starts on the green and Grant starts on the tee? Can Bobby win if he starts up by 20 strokes? Can Bobby win recently if he can pick up Grant's ball at any point and throw it wherever he wants? Bobby's so bad, I think one time Grant did it blindfolded, right? Now, why is that a good pink goldfish? Why is that good freak factor? Why is that good imperfectionist? Because that's flaunting. Bobby's whole thing is built on admitting and being unashamed and unapologetic about his weaknesses, being bad at golf, and putting it on display. In pink goldfish, we call that flaunting. Being unashamed and unapologetic, we call that the same thing in freak factor. Part of the Flawsome framework in pink goldfish is exposing, being transparent about your weaknesses. Bobby Fairways doesn't, Robbie Berger doesn't take 3 cuts with the video and then only show the good shots and try to act like he's better than he is and try to trick the viewers into thinking that he's better than he is. He's not on there, for his ego and to try to brag about something that isn't true, and he misses a putt and he tries again. He doesn't do that, right? So he's doing all of the things we talk about, but it goes beyond there because he's an incredibly successful business person. He's recently built something called Bob HQ, and they've got putting greens, and they've got video screens, and they've got basketball courts, and they've got this basically playland for guys and for athletes. And all of that is built with the money that he's made being bad at golf, but not just being bad at golf. He's got a bunch of other weaknesses as well. His podcast is called the Brilliantly Dumb Podcast. His handle on Instagram is Brilliantly Dumb. And think about those two things together, right? That's the imperfection. His weakness is strength. Brilliantly dumb. So he has a Brilliantly Dumb podcast, and one of their segments on the Brilliantly Dumb podcast is Ask Bob. And what they do is they ask Bob really simple questions about history. And for example, they asked him who was on Mount Rushmore, and one of his guesses was Al Gore. Not a good guess. They ask him things about continents, and he tells them countries. They ask him how to spell things, and he doesn't know. They show him a flag of an obvious country that you think most people would know of, and they would have learned in 5th grade. He doesn't know, and he willingly participates in that segment because he knows it's funny and he knows it's interesting, and he's not ashamed of the fact that he's not that smart, at least the way schools define smart. He didn't graduate from college. He doesn't have an education, and when he was in school, he wasn't paying attention. He was busy, focused on other things, and so he's not smart in conventional ways, and yet he's built these incredible businesses. He does Cameo, if you know what those are, where you record messages for people to share with loved ones for Father's Day or Mother's Day or for anniversaries. Cameos where you can get celebrities to record a personalized message for you or someone that you want to give that to as sort of a gift. And he's become one of the top people on Cameo, and he does thousands and thousands of them a year and makes a ton of money from doing that. He has a segment on Instagram called Feed Bob where he reviews food, and then these food companies like Arby's sponsor him. And again, Arby's isn't a high-class place. It's not super high-quality food, and he knows that. And he sponsors them because he's not trying to be highbrow about it, although he does like a lot of really nice and expensive food as well. And so he's just got all of these things. I'm trying to remember all of them. He's got Feed Bob, and now he's even opening his own restaurant. He loves bagels, and that's one thing that he reviews all the time on his Feed Bob segments. He always has a number for his Feed Bob segment, and it's never the right number, right? He just goes, this is Feed Bob episode 3,493. He doesn't keep track, and they're not in order, right? Which is another example of I don't care and I don't know, and this is imperfect, and the numbering system doesn't work because it doesn't matter. I'm just going to talk right now. But he loves bagels. I think he's from New York, New Jersey area. And he loves bagels, and now he lives down in Jupiter, Florida, and they don't have the same kind of Northeast bagel culture, and he wants to bring that down there. And so now he's opening a bagel restaurant. He's incredibly successful as a business person, as a celebrity, as an influencer, and he's not smart. He doesn't have a big education. He isn't good at golf. And he's successful because of those things, not in spite of those things. They have, with Bob Does Sports, they have a clothing line called Breezy Golf. You can get hats, you can get shirts, you can get quarter zips. I have one of their shirts and hats. I actually wore it when I broke 80 for the first time. And I sent him a message and said, hey man, we're getting there. I broke 80, wearing Breezy stuff. They've got their own line of alcoholic canned beverages called Have a Day, where they've got these transfusions and these other things. He's an incredible entrepreneur. He's incredibly smart, and he's incredibly dumb. He's incredibly talented, and yet he can't do certain things. He's really, really good in some areas, and he has completely no ability in other areas. And one of the things he does, one of the things we talk about in Freak Factor, is partner with people who are strong where you're weak. So he's not opening the bagel restaurant and going to work in the back and be making the bagels and cooking the bagels and putting the toppings on the bagels and standing up front checking people out. He knows these people from where he grew up, I think in New York or New Jersey, I think New Jersey, and they know how to run bagel restaurants, and he's going to bring them in as partners to run this restaurant and make this happen. He doesn't have to be good at it. He just has the ideas, and he's able to make these things happen with the relationships, which is one of his skills. He's incredible with relationships and building connections with people. He's incredibly generous and kind and thoughtful. If you watch anything that he does, he's always asking people questions and learning from them. He recently had LeBron James, one of the most famous and successful athletes in America, and certainly also famous in the world in general, on his show, where LeBron wasn't there as a favor to Bob Does Sports. LeBron is there because Bob Does Sports is potentially actually going to increase his profile. And also LeBron's getting excited about golf. And also, to his credit, LeBron was terrible at golf. He was really, really bad. And most of his shots that he took were absolutely worthless. But he was okay with being imperfect at golf because he's new at it and he's trying to learn and he's excited about it. So check him out. On Instagram, Brilliantly Dumb. Check out the Brilliantly Dumb podcast. Check it out if you're into golf or you just like entertainment. And that's what I'm discovering. People are watching this stuff, watching Bob Does Sports like a reality show. Their kids are watching it. Guys are into it and their wives are realizing this is interesting because you get to find out about Joey's kids and you get to find out. And that's, I mean, the whole cast is a great example of the Imperfectionist. One of the guys on their team is Fat Perez. Which is a throwback to a guy who was a golfer named Pat Perez. But Fat Perez was fat. I mean, he's recently lost a bunch of weight, but he's still a big guy, and he's getting fit, but he's still a big guy, and his nickname was Fat Perez. His nickname was a sort of a not flattering nickname about his weight, and he was unashamed and unapologetic about that, and people loved him and people love him, and he's also an amazing golfer. Another guy is Joseph DeMar, is the other guy of the three main guys on the show, and they call him Joey Cold Cuts, and he's overweight, and he's sometimes a good golfer and he's sometimes terrible. He also gets really, really mad and really upset. Almost every show features him having some kind of blow up. And people love watching that because people get mad on the golf course. People get mad in real life. And people love Joey because of how crazy he is. And people also hate him. And so they have a new hater series where they have people who trash him online come on the show and play one-on-one against him and see if they can back up their talk. So everyone on the show kind of meets the imperfectionist standards that we've talked about, and they flaunt things, and they're unashamed and they're unapologetic and they're imperfect, and that's what makes them interesting. And here's why how you know this is true too, that the golf, the YouTube golf that they're ahead of, Bob Does Sports is at the pinnacle. The people they're ahead of are all good golfers. One of them, the Bryan brothers, one of them used to be a professional PGA Tour golfer. He won on the PGA Tour. People don't like watching really good golfers as much as they like watching bad golfers. And one of the things actually people like about watching good golfers is when they do bad, because it makes them feel better about the fact that they do bad when they go out and golf. So that's an example that I've really been liking lately and really fits in with the imperfectionist mindset, with the Freak Factor book, with Pink Goldfish. So whether it's a business or it's you as a person, or as with Bobby Fairways with Robbie Berger, you are the business, right? You are the brand. And so he's a pink goldfish. He's also demonstrating the Freak Factor. He's a great example of imperfection in action. So this has been an episode of the Imperfectionist podcast. I hope to be back soon, and I'm definitely going to be back soon with our, like I said, limited series or extended series on our new book that I wrote with Stan Phelps, who's my co-author for Pink Goldfish 2.0, called Speak Different: How to Present Ideas That Inspire Action. And so if you need to speak at work effectively, if you need to speak in your career, if you need to run meetings, if you have sales presentations, if you have to attend conferences and do breakouts or get on stage in any way, if you're trying to be better at communicating with other people, Speak Different is going to be a resource that will help you with that. And we're going to be starting a series there, so tune in for that. Share it with your friends. And like I said, always like, comment, subscribe, and give us some feedback if this was helpful. If you've got any sayings that you think are ridiculous, and you hear things that influencers and podcasters and self-help experts are saying that you think is nonsense, send it to me and I will address those in future episodes. See you next time. This has been the Imperfectionist Podcast. I'm David Rendall.